Hello, and welcome back to the Life of Nurse podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about sort of the end of the year. The end of the year is coming up, so in December, all the major auction houses have auctions that they host in New York City. So I'll go over the main ones, Sotheby's, Christie's, Phillips, and kind of speak through some of the lots that they have. There are also some watch releases that happened this year that I wanted to go over. So that's sort of the plan for this podcast. We will start off with a collaboration that Audemars Piguet did, which was a Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar Open Work Cactus Jack LE. Audemars Piguet collaborated with famous rapper Travis Scott and created a piece that took inspiration from his record label Cactus Jack. The watch is a chocolate brown Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar that's limited to 200 pieces. The piece is a really beautiful perpetual calendar open worked piece that obviously has garnered a lot of attention by collectors. I think a lot of people would say this is like the ultimate Audemars Piguet out there right now. There are some subtle details that make this collaboration quite interesting. The first being the typography on the dial. When you look at the dial, you can see that the font is the same font that is used by the Travis Scott's record label. They've also replaced the Earth's natural satellite with the Cactus Jack emblematic smiley face with the mouth sewn shut. What's also really cool is the typography of the complications are luminescent, including the smiley faces from the Cactus Jack motif. And I think that is also something that sort of adds a pretty cool accent to this specific piece. It's going to be available in AP boutiques. It's a really cool collaboration. It's an interesting one because you have to think about the fact that people who are probably buying the open work, do they like Travis Scott? Is that something that they're interested in? I would say so. So that's quite cool. There was an event in New York City, which was also cool to see, and I do think that people will buy these. They'll probably be gone pretty soon. They probably have already got allocation, or they probably knew who were going to get allocations to these pieces. So, anyway. It's an interesting piece. It's going to be interesting going into the new year for Audemars Piguet to see if they decide to mix up sort of what they've been doing. Obviously, they've got a new CEO coming in, which we've covered on Life on the Wrist, and that will be an interesting turning point to see what sort of the plan for Audemars Piguet is going forward. I will say that I am personally feeling a little bit of Royal Oak fatigue. It seems like the watch that everybody's wearing, everybody's talking about, and it's kind of getting, there's some fatigue that I'm feeling from this specific model. I was at Christie's this past week for an event, and I got to see one of the Code 1159s, and it was just, I don't know, in some ways refreshing to see and handle and try on that piece with so many, with the fatigue that I'm feeling from the Royal Oak. But a cool collaboration and a really, I think is a really good looking piece. I wanted to also speak briefly about a lineup of 6 pieces that were released from Vacheron Constantin at Dubai Watch Week, where Vacheron Constantin unveiled 6 new creations under the Maison Les Cabinotiers program, which is essentially Vacheron Constantin's long-standing tradition of crafting bespoke timepieces and releasing an annual collection of truly exceptional one-of-a-kind creations. The Les Cabinotiers is where unique pieces are constructed for collectors, and they work with Vacheron Constantin to create something extremely beautiful and personal. But they do an annual collection of unique pieces that really take into consideration all the things that Vacheron Constantin is trying to do when it comes to creating exceptionally high quality pieces. So you're getting unique pieces that are pushing the boundaries of the of the brand. The pieces that they released were really diverse in their executions. I'm not going to speak through each of them, but what I will do is Waco sat down with Christian Selamy, who is the style and heritage director of Vacheron Constantin, and they did a really great job speaking through each of the pieces. A lot of these pieces take inspiration from sort of architecture. So they have one that has a lot of inspiration taken from the sort of buildings of New York City, and they speak really elegantly through each of the pieces. So I will leave a link in the show notes for you to see them, because if you want to know about fine watchmaking and a brand that's focused on fine watchmaking with their Le Cabinotiers program, this is a perfect example of that. So there'll be a link in the description of this, I guess the show notes of this podcast, if you would like to see that. It's I think sometimes on YouTube you can get a little bit of fatigue with the things that you'd be watching, and I think it was kind of refreshing to see something a little bit different. Nice in-depth video that Wei did, and a big shout out to Revolution for that video. All right, so onto the auction houses. I wanted to kind of just give a brief overview of them and maybe pick out some of the pieces that I thought were quite interesting. Sotheby's has their important watches auction taking place on the 7th of December, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern New York time. The catalog is quite, I think the catalog sums up the direction that Sotheby's is going. I think Sotheby's as an auction house is really coming to fruition with incredible pieces that they're sourcing, and I would say moving in the right direction with their auctions. There were some really cool pieces that they have. They obviously have exhibitions if you'd like to go see them in person. They've got a really nice 1518R. They've got, my personal favorite is a 1463 Tassi Tondi that was it's Tiffany signed. But what's really cool about this piece is it's kind of the dial has aged this really beautiful brown color, and then there's also a little bit of oxidation on the bottom right side or bottom left side of the case. So that's definitely one of my favorites. But they have a lot of variety in their pieces. They've got a crash, which seems to be a big, there's a lot of popularity around them. They have a really great collection of 50 Fathoms, which I think is also kind of seeing a resurgence. They've got a nice spread of independents, a lot of FP Journes, a couple of MBNFs as well. There's a Perpetual. There's also a HM9, the Sapphire Vision Flow that they've got there. So some pretty cool pieces. I also really like the fact that they sourced a Louis Monet. They have a Louis Monet reference 105.50, which I thought was quite a nice sort of different watch that you don't typically see at auction. As I mentioned, I think they've kind of moved in the right direction. They've sourced some really interesting pieces, and I think they've really focused on exceptional quality and really interesting pieces that can make their catalog quite exciting to collectors. And that's, for me, I think what gets me excited about Sotheby's for this auction season. So it's going to be cool to see how they end up doing. So that one is on December 7th. Christie's is hosting their important watches auction. It starts on December 5th at 10 a.m. Now that I think about it, when this podcast comes out, they will be hosting their important watches auction. I had the opportunity to go to their luxury and design opening reception, and if I'm completely honest, I was kind of underwhelmed with their catalog of watches for New York. I think they've had some interesting pieces in Hong Kong. They had some interesting pieces, and I think in Geneva they had some interesting pieces, but not to say that the catalog's great, but it wasn't something that sort of spoke to me really heavily. They do have an MB&F LM2 that was nice to see. They have a pretty cool reference 8171 Rolex that I thought was quite nice, but I felt like it was missing something for me. I will say there was one piece that I thought was really, really cool. It was an IWC in pink gold. Let me get the reference for you. It's lot 62, reference 383. What's really cool about this piece is two things. The first thing is it's from 1953 and has this really beautiful cloisonné enamel dial that is a very rare thing to find in watches just in general, but also from IWC. But the reason why this watch was so cool to me is the case. So if you know, we covered an IWC time-only piece with a caliber 89 movement in it, and it had this really beautiful 36 millimeter rose gold case with these beautiful Bombay twisted lugs, and it was so cool it was such a cool design and such a unique case. And I got a lot of people reaching out to me about this. I still have people reaching out to me about this specific piece. What's cool is that case, it looks like is the same exact case that was used in this IWC that's being auctioned. So it was really cool to kind of see that case, see the cloisonné enamel dial, but also know, like, kind of, I think you kind of being able to wear and touch and feel and examine, the time-only piece that I had. I kind of probably knew what that piece would feel like on the wrist, and it's an absolutely phenomenal piece. That was I think that was really the lot that spoke to me the most, but they do have a wonderful collection of some nice Patek Philippe's. They've got a really cool 570 with a pink dial that was quite nice. They've got a really nice Cartier, long Cartier. They've got a really nice pocket watch as well. So some interesting pieces. I think they're one of the most spoken about lots was it was a if I'm not mistaken, it was I think it's lot 88. I want to make sure I get this correct, but one of their lots was the property of Andy Warhol. I want to tell you the wrong reference here, so let me make sure I give you the right information. But as many people know, Andy Warhol was a very big collector. Some of his pieces have come up for auction. It was quite interesting, the Significant Watches podcast. They kind of said that Andy Warhol as a collector, he really built an exceptional collection of pieces, the pieces are legendary. The ones that he has purchased and owned. The watch that Christie's has at auction is a 3448 perpetual calendar from Patek Philippe, and was the property of Andy Warhol. But what was quite interesting, what was said on the Significant Watches podcast, was that he was a collector in mass and maybe not condition. That's a subjective statement. Maybe the condition of this 3448 is at the level that you would want it, and I'm sure that could be the case. So check it out. It's a really nice piece regardless, but something just to note. All right, and so lastly, we will discuss Phillips. So Phillips has their New York Watch Auction 9 taking place on the 9th and 10th of December. So over the weekend, they curated an interesting collection of vintage and modern pieces, everything from independents to sort of larger groups. There were some nice pieces that they curated. There was a really important George Daniels Millennium that's coming up. There's some nice independents. I think quite a few F. Bjorns as well. It's going to be interesting to see how indies do, I think, over this auction season. There might be some fatigue on independent brands, I think, maybe, but we'll have to see what what happens? The catalog, like I said, has a nice variety of modern and vintage, pretty heavily, on many of the brands that you can think of, Patek Philippe, Vacheron being some pretty heavy hitters. But they've also got some really cool pieces, like Lot 44 is a reference 96 from Patek Philippe, and you can bet that it's going to be of really extreme quality. They also have a really cool coin watch, Audemars Piguet, some pocket watches from Patek Philippe. So some really nice variety. They've got the Maxi Oval Cartier Audemars Piguet piece as well, which I think is quite nice. I feel like every auction, there has to be some sort of Tassi Tondi. There's a Tassi Tondi 1463 signed by Serpico, which is, obviously the Tassi Tondi is really desired. Those double signed ones are also really great. One of my favorite pieces is actually a 4178 from Vacheron Constantin. It's in pink gold, and the dial has really aged this beautiful sort of toasted brown color. There is some, what it looks like oxidation spots. I'm not sure if it's oxidation. I would have to sort of inquire about that, but a really nice piece from 1943 that I like a lot. It's lot 62. So I think the catalog's quite interesting. I think one of the most controversial ones, though, and it will be interesting to see what it actually sells for, is a Casio. It's lot number 79, being offered with no reserve, and it's a Casio G-Shock GD001 that is being, I think from what I know, AI basically produced this G-Shock, designed this G-Shock. And I think collectors have their opinions about this piece. The proceeds will go to benefit the Nature Conservancy, so there is that sort of angle to it. We'll have to see what it ends up going for, but I'll just personally say I probably won't be bidding on it myself. As I mentioned, there's some nice independents. There's a HM8 from MBNF that obviously I will be tracking because, love the brand. So really nice variety, and I think that's something that Philips always does really well. Of course, the quality of these pieces are also extremely high. What's really interesting is that MBNF has been showing up a lot more in these auctions for New York. So, as I mentioned, there's an HM8. They also have a Legacy Machine number 2 in yellow gold. They also have a HM4 that's being sold. So, quite interesting to me that there's more and more of this coming up, more and more of MBNF sort of showing up in the auction world. The last piece that I want to talk about is a piece that really spoke to me very, very heavily. It's a reference 1526 from 1947. The main reason is the case. The case has this incredible sort of red oxidation that's happened to it. I posted on our Instagram, on Life and Nurse Instagram, so you probably saw the post there, but a really nice piece, and again, just speaks to me as a collector. So I hope you guys enjoy watching these auctions. It will be nice to see how these pieces do. And, wrapping up the year, which is, I think this will be kind of like a nice way to wrap up 2023 for many of us as we go into the holiday season, but also as we close out our watch collecting, watch enthusiasm journeys from the last year. It'll probably be telling with a lot of the trends for these pieces as well. So that's always a great reason to make sure that you tune in, or at least take a look at how the results pan out for these auctions. As I mentioned, there will be links in the show notes of this podcast to all the things we spoke about, as always. If you are new to this podcast, be sure to follow us so you are the first one, so you don't miss out on any future episodes that we post. We'll probably have a couple more episodes to close out the year, but we are getting to that time where the holidays are rolling around, so we'll have to see what happens. If you wouldn't mind rating this podcast, it really does help me out. And if you have some feedback or want to talk about watches, be sure to message us on our website, lifeandnurse.com, or you can message us on Instagram. We're always available to talk about watches. With that said, guys, I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast, and until next time.